I love movies. I've always loved movies, all kinds of movies. However, if I had to pick a genre that I love the most, it would be horror. Anything with monsters, slashers, ghosts, I'm all in for it. So it only makes sense that the very first movie that I ever saw in theaters was Casper in 1995. I love this movie. I've always loved this movie. I still remember going to see it in theaters, and it was a big deal. Again, it was my first movie, and Casper was actually pretty successful. The movie is really, really unique and special, and it's one of those movies that doesn't get talked about much, but when it's brought up, there's nothing but love to be said for it. Most cartoon adaptations for movies, they're not very layered, and they're just kind of boring. Now with Casper, there wasn't really a lot for them to work with, and the stuff that they came up with, I think, is pretty unique considering. Casper tackles a lot of different ideas. However, it's simplified and it's pretty easy to understand, but I think it raises a few questions that I thought were interesting just because I love this movie. I've seen it like 50 million times and I overanalyze things. So let's get into it. All right, the plot of Casper goes like this. A wealthy philanthropist dies, leaving 99% of his fortune to various charities and environmental efforts. The other 1% he leaves to his greedy daughter Kerrigan in the form of Whipstaff Manor in Friendship, Maine. Overcome with gratefulness, she throws the deed to the mansion in a fire, inadvertently revealing a secret message that there's in fact treasure in Whipstaff. So, Kerrigan and her lawyer Dibbs set out for Friendship, Maine in search of treasure. But wait, there's more. Turns out the mansion is haunted by 4 ghosts who scare away anyone who sets foot on the grounds. So Kerrigan and Dibbs seek the help of exorcists, paranormal scientists, and others to help, get the ghosts out of the mansion. But wait, there's even more. Come on, you gotta keep up with me. One of the 4 ghosts actually doesn't want to scare people. In fact, the young spook has a very friendly disposition, embracing everyone he comes in contact with, yearning for companionship from the living who cower away in fear. The name of this ghost is Casper. That is the name of the movie. Okay, so now we're finally getting into it. Thanks for keeping up. On television, Casper sees a story on Dr. James Harvey, a psychiatrist for ghosts who helps them cross over into the great beyond. Casper brings this to Kerrigan's attention so that he can be hired, and Casper can get to the bottom of his baggage and cross over into peace. Psych nods, because Dr. Harvey's daughter Kat is really cute, so way to go, Casper. Dr. Harvey is a widower who is obsessed with making contact with his dead wife, which would explain why he moves his daughter from place to place to give ghost therapy. Yeah, he's not grieving very well. Kat is his biggest critic, and she attempts to get her father to see the reason and, explain that his need to find his wife isn't healthy and that the unstableness of their life is causing friction in not only their relationship, but also her social life. Kat and the good doctor arrive at Whipstaff, and both are actually shocked to discover there's ghosts. So that means that Dr. Harvey, who is supposed to be a ghost psychiatrist, he is shocked that there are ghosts in the mansion, and he's actually terrified and freaks out. So does this mean that Dr. Harvey, who claims to be a ghost psychiatrist, hasn't actually given a ghost therapy yet? Casper unintentionally scares Kat and her father, and to make matters worse, his uncles, the ghostly trio, show up with every intention of scaring and making them leave. Casper's uncles are trash dudes. They basically treat Casper like Cinderella, making him do chores, verbally abusing him, berating him, something like. However, Dr. Harvey has a job to do, so he begins therapy sessions with the ghostly trio, getting nowhere, and yet, everything with Casper's uncles and Dr. Harvey is brilliant. I very much love it. They're some of my favorite scenes. There were a lot of things that were cut out with them, including a musical number that they did while Dr. Harvey's trying to, again, give them therapy. And what's funny is he's supposed to be giving the ghost therapy so that they can cross over, but Casper's uncles actually revel in the fact that they're ghosts. And what's cool is They actually begin to get attached to Dr. Harvey, and the four of them kind of form like a weird relationship where he kind of starts to grow on them. And they even at one point in the movie make a deal with him that, you know, if they basically keep Kerrigan, you know, off of their backs and, you know, keeps them in the house, then they'll help him make contact with his wife. Now, this is kind of played for a bit to make it look like they're lying, but it does come back later. Remember that. Casper and Kat also get to know each other over breakfast, and there's this really cute moment. And there's also like this whole middle school side plot where, you know, there's the mean girl at school that doesn't like Kat, and, you know, the cute guy at school asks her to the dance, and then Casper gets jealous and he wants to go to the dance with Kat, but, you know, he's dead, so he can't. And they agree to have the Halloween dance at Kat's house because, you know, it's haunted and spooky, and we're just gonna have the Halloween dance at this girl's house who just moved here, who we don't know. But Casper shares with Kat what it's like to be a ghost. Remember, Casper's the ghost of a dead child, and we find out that you become a ghost if you die with unfinished business. This can be some obligation, goal, purpose, etc. Ghosts can only cross over upon completing said unfinished business. Remember that. However, in a cruel twist of irony, ghosts also forget everything about their lives after they die, which I imagine would make completing unfinished business quite difficult. Kat helps Casper get his memory back, which is when we get the biggest gut punch in the movie, where Casper tells her how he died of pneumonia and his spirit only stayed behind so that his grieving father wouldn't be lonely. And if that wasn't deep enough for you, it turns out Casper's father was also a scientist who, after seeing his son's ghost, decided to make a machine called the Lazarus to bring him back to life. And to make it just a little more messed up, Casper's father had the bright idea of telling others about these things, and so he was committed to an insane asylum. This is huge. This is the first time in any Casper anything up to this point where the elephant in the room is addressed. Said elephant being that Casper is the ghost of a dead child. Not only that, but there are rules to ghosts in this universe and reasons why one becomes a ghost. So this is what Dr. Harvey claims to do, actually, and he helps ghosts get to the bottom of their unfinished business so that they can then, quote, cross over. Now, after this, Casper and Kat find the Lazarus, and turns out there's just enough juice left for one more cook. But Kerrigan and Dibs steal it so they can kill themselves, turn into ghosts, and penetrate the walls of the vault. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Kerrigan falls to her death and becomes a ghost. She gets Casper's treasure, which turns out to be only a baseball, and she plans to use the only cook in the Lazarus on herself. But luckily, Casper and Kat trick her into admitting she's completed her unfinished business and send her to hell. Boom. Big bad defeated. Casper gets his treasure back, and he can now use the Lazarus to be alive again. But wait, Dr. Harvey goes out drinking with the ghostly trio and accidentally falls into a ditch, becoming a ghost. Pause. If Dr. Harvey is a ghost, this means he has unfinished business. One might think that his business would be to look after his daughter since she's so young and, you know, he's all that she has left in the world. The sad reality is Dr. Harvey's business is the pursuit of his wife's ghost, seeing as he still hasn't processed her death and accepted it. As ghosts do, he's forgotten Kat until she jogs his memory, and then, in an act of selflessness, Casper gives up the opportunity for life and uses the Lazarus on Dr. Harvey instead. Kat and her father are reunited, and now it's time for the Halloween party. Casper's like really bummed out because, you know, he very much wished to be alive so he could go to the Halloween dance with Kat. And just like that, Casper is visited by Kat's mom, who's like a force ghost angel or whatever or something. And because Casper did such a selfless thing, he's granted his wish of being alive, but only until 10 p.m. because, you know, he's only 12. Casper finally gets to dance with Kat at the Halloween party. They embrace, float, share a kiss. An entire middle school is traumatized, and they all live happily ever after. Let's rewind it back to the ghost rules of the universe and Casper's sad backstory. Ghosts are ghosts because they have unfinished business. This is different for every individual, and they can only cross over once said business has been resolved. We see this in real time with Kerrigan after she dies. She's a ghost with unfinished business, which would be obtaining the treasure. And once acquiring said treasure and admitting she's done so, that's when we see her cross over. You know, she beams and explodes or whatever. Dr. Harvey is someone else who we see become a ghost in the movie. His unfinished business, as we already established, is the pursuit of his dead wife's ghost. A moot point we learned by the end of the movie, but also Dr. Harvey is brought back to life thanks to the Lazarus, so his unfinished business being resolved, really doesn't matter. Casper McFadden, however, is another situation. Casper can't use the Lazarus because he let Dr. Harvey use it instead in what was a one-time only deal. He can't cross over into peace or whatever due to the nature of his unfinished business. Casper's soul stayed behind to keep his grieving father company. That's it. How does that get resolved? I'd conclude any solutions to this that maybe could have led to Casper crossing over are no longer feasible at the story's point in time, with the exception of one thing which I'm not sure would work within the film's rules, but it's all I could think of. In theory, Casper might be able to cross over if he himself comes to terms that it was never his responsibility to make his father, not be lonely after his death. Him getting sick isn't his fault or his father's. Now, Casper does mention that his father wanted him to come in from playing in the snow and that he didn't want to, but, that's kids being kids. And looking at the theoretical time period that Casper died, plus their location being Maine, it's possible Casper got sick during the Great Blizzard of 1888, which I think we can chalk up to being an act of God. So that being said, Casper letting go of his obligation upon its revelation should be enough for him to cross over. Again, theory. Even upon Casper's memory recovery, when sharing details about his death and why he stayed behind, there seems to be a bit of admission on his part, kind of acknowledging the mootness of his unfinished business. But this is just in his tone and delivery. We even learned from Kat's mom that Casper's father is actually proud of him, meaning he's the same kind of force ghost angel as Amelia and exists in the same dimensional plane that she inhabits. So even though Casper's father was committed for his comments about raising his dead son, it doesn't seem to have been a goal that consumed his heart, mind, and soul to the extent of it becoming his unfinished business. It's possible before his death, while residing in a psych ward, he accepted his son's death and moved on from it, resulting in no ghost dad. One could even argue that upon Casper learning of his father's pride for him, that would be enough for him to cross over, but of course that doesn't happen. Most of that comes of this is a jaw drop and a baseball drop, so gasp. All this said, Casper can never cross over, even if he wanted to. The theories I mentioned also don't seem to hold up, because if they did, again, we would have seen Casper cross over. Obviously, the movie wouldn't end that way, because it's the Casper the Friendly Ghost movie, but this fact is still very sad, and the origin that the screenwriters for Casper came up with, as well as the rules for ghosts, are pretty creative considering the source material. It's almost an anomaly this film exists the way it does. Most live action adaptations of popular cartoons are lazy and just not good. And while Casper has a few plot holes and the lore the writers came up with seems to be lacking due to the scenes that were deleted, the film still holds up and is a fantastic family comedy. For being a 90s staple of sorts, it's surprisingly timeless. And while it doesn't seem to be mentioned much, Casper 1995 was a very successful picture, and I've yet to meet a single person that would call it a bad film. This movie means a lot to me. Again, it was the first movie I ever saw in the cinema, and I'm glad that it's a movie that, even as I watch it as an adult, it still holds up, it's still entertaining, it's well made, it's well directed, it's funny, and it's a little deep, and again, it's really weird, and it's just really, really cool. I've wanted to make a video about Casper ever since I made the YouTube channel. It's a movie that's really important to me, and at the time of the posting of this video, it's Halloween time, so I couldn't think of a better time to finally unveil this. If you haven't seen Casper, you gotta check it out. Where have you been? Living in a cave under a rock on Mars or something? Seeing is believing.